Sarah. Okay, welcome everybody. This is the October meeting of the Kingfield Neighborhood Association Board. It is 7 o'clock here, October 13th. We have a full agenda today, and going to be trying to get through everything. So appreciate everybody's willingness to work through this and go from there. So I believe, Sarah, you posted the agenda in the chat, so everybody should have that available. If you don't, maybe we can throw that back in there. So I will first kind of call the meeting to order and kind of give what we usually do at the top of these meetings is do a community forum. As I always say, we are all members of the community. So if there are anything that board members would like to share with other board members, now would be a great time to do that as well. I do see that we have one member of the community here on the call right now. So Lynn, if there's anything you would like to share with the board or anything you would like to kind of bring up now would be a great time to do it. We also do typically do kind of open meetings. We are kind of during our discussion of the charter items are going to kind of reserve that discussion and reserve that time for board members. But as we move into the second half of the meeting, would love participation in any way that you would like as well too. So I will open it up to everybody right now for our community forum portion of the meeting. Great. Seeing no comments, we will now open up the meeting. Could I get a motion to approve what would be the consent agenda, which would be the minutes from our September meeting and the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any discussion on that? Okay, then we'll move forward. All in favor? Aye. Yes. Thumbs up. Yes in the chat. No. And any abstentions? Okay, great. That passes. So with that, I will move on quickly. If it's okay with you, obviously, just to kind of frame this discussion for this kind of first hour, we're going to be talking mostly about charter amendments. I framed this meeting in the first half of this meeting in an email to everybody, kind of introducing the agenda. You know, the board has, KFNA's board has the, I guess authority is the best way to say it, to take positions on charter amendments, other things. The board does not support specific political candidates. That's kind of a clear distinction here, but does, has and can take stances on things like charter amendments. So really four resolutions have been brought by board members that we are going to consider tonight. I will say the board can take a stance. It does not have to take a stance, but these resolutions and this discussion is on the agenda tonight, and the plan is to vote on these amendments. So I think what we're going to do is kind of kick it off in the order that we have here right now. We're going to have folks introduce the specific resolutions and discussions that they have presented to the board, and kind of the format we're going to go through is giving everybody an opportunity to speak if they would like to speak on these. I think, you know, going around once with everybody, getting a minute to speak if they would like to. So the goal would be, if you will introduce these resolutions, please put your name into the chat. If you would like to kind of be placed in the queue to have be a part of that discussion. If somebody brings something up and then you want to jump into the queue after that, that is totally fine as well. But I do ask that people keep kind of their comments to a minute, so that, because we do have a lot to discuss. So with that said, Alice, if you are ready, your resolution is first on the docket, so I will kick it over to you to introduce.
Thank you, Chris.
Regardless how the votes turn out on any of the individual races or any of the charter amendments, we as a city have a lot of work to do going forward. Yeah, I think there is just tremendous agreement and consensus in the city. I've lived here 50 years. I've never seen this much consensus on something. Ironically, I've never seen as much division as we go about trying to do this. So I just wanted to put something forward on behalf of the neighborhood association for the community to just share our commitment to going forward, regardless how things turn out. We are going to work hard together to make all the changes that we all want to see in better public safety, good governance, and housing stability. And I think that's it's as simple as that.
Thank you, Alice. I'll maybe give everyone an opportunity. The link is in the agenda right now. If you haven't had a chance to read the proposed resolution, I would very much encourage you to do so. I'm very thankful that Alice brought this forward. So is there any discussion on this specific item or anything anyone would like to share on this specific item? Check the chat, seeing none. If we are ready to move forward with a vote on this quickly, that is great. So what I will do is ask for a motion to, or I guess, yeah, ask for a motion to support the resolution as Alice has proposed.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion that anyone would like to share now? Seeing
just-
none.
I'll just
Oh.
thank Alice
Yep.
for working on it. I like it.
My pleasure.
Any other discussion? Great. All those in favor, please aye. Yes in the chat, thumbs up.
Aye.
Opposed? And any abstentions? That passes. Thank you so much, Alice. I will.
Thank you.
I will kick this over quickly. Now we're kind of moving into the 3 charter amendments. We're gonna, I believe, take them in order. So I will move it quickly to Josh, who I believe is going to be introducing the first resolution on. Do we call it Charter Amendment number 1? Is that the best way to refer to it?
Sure. I think question 1 is
Question
the way they refer to it. Do you want me to just read the resolution first and then how do you want to do this?
Yeah, I would say if you wanted to read it and then to kind of introduce a little bit of background, I would say if you can keep it to 2 minutes, that would be great.
Okay. All right, so the text of the resolution itself is, whereas the Kingfield Neighborhood Association supports the values of collaborative, transparent governance, whereas KFNA supports the values of residents from all parts of the city having equal representation, whereas efforts to undermine these principles should be opposed, therefore be it resolved that KFNA endorses a no vote on the Strong Mayor Charter Amendment. So as some background, a weak mayor system is one in which the mayor is just another member of the city council and often presides over meetings. Often a city manager hired and fired by the council manages executive and administrative functions. Conversely, a strong mayor system, which is proposed, is one in which the mayor has administrative power over all city departments, proposes a budget, and has veto authority. The current system in Minneapolis is somewhere between those two systems. So my rationale behind this position, the theory behind the Strong Mayor Amendment from the Charter Commission is that it will make government more efficient and responsive, although the question remains who will be responsive to. Each member of the Minneapolis City Council represents an equal number of city residents, and therefore each ward of the city has equal representation on the council. Officials elected on a citywide basis, however, are elected disproportionately by different regions of the city due to variations in turnout. Turnout in the 2017 election as a proportion of registered voters varied significantly, with Ward 13 in Southwest Minneapolis turning out at nearly double the rate of Ward 5 in North Minneapolis. As a result, this amendment would further exacerbate the power imbalance between whiter, wealthier wards in South Minneapolis and poorer, more diverse neighborhoods in North Minneapolis. Further, the City Council is required under state law and its own rules to conduct its business in public meetings, which provides the public insight into the deliberative process and enables them to better engage with their elected representatives. The decision-making process of a single individual is necessarily more opaque, and attracting the attention of an official representing the full city may be more difficult for ordinary residents.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Josh, for that introduction and the background. If I don't see the chat right now, but any names of the chat or anyone who would like to speak to this specific resolution.
I have a question about, I guess, all three resolutions. As to, I mean, if we, regardless of which way we end up voting on them, not to sound callous, but like, why does it matter? How do people find out that that's what KFNA, the board, feels about it? Would you just put it out on our website then? Is it like another thing for people to look at and consider?
Yep, maybe I can take a shot at this, and maybe Sarah, any other board members who have been a part of other charter questions, resolution stances that the board has taken can weigh in on this as well. Typically, what the board has done when taking stances on specific things, as we even took stances on earlier around different the original charter process, was also directing, kind of associated with that, directing staff to share information, to put out information in a specific way, to whether that's the website, whether that is through our Twitter or other social media accounts, saying this is the stance that the board took. This is why they took it. So it would be kind of the purview of the board to direct staff to share that information publicly. I guess that would be the kind of the technical answer that I would have. And then the non-technical answer that I would have is, I think as an elected body in this community, I believe that the board hopefully is viewed as taking on a leadership role and representing the community, and therefore the stances that the board and KFNA takes are leadership stances, are hopefully looked at and considered by the community as representative of the broad, spectrum of our neighborhood. So that's kind of more of the informal process. But typically, what we've done is shared that with the community through our various means of communication. And I think it would be up to the board on the direction to staff on how that is done. Any other broad question or any other specific questions about this process, or questions about the question 1 in this resolution? Or statements?
I have just a statement. I support this resolution. You consider the fact that Minneapolis has some of the worst racial disparities of any major city in the United States, further entrenching the power of the legislative or the executive power of the whitest and wealthiest corners of the city. Does not seem like a good way to go about addressing that. Our current system of government relies on collaboration between different communities. I think that is an important thing to recognize. To the extent that a strong mayor system would allow us to point one finger at one person, There's benefit there, but I think it comes at an extremely high trade-off of further silencing the voices of folks that have been frankly oppressed in Minneapolis for generations. So I'm hard in support of this resolution.
Are we doing our discussion now before I mean, how is this working?
Yeah, so I would say what we're kind of doing is now we're giving everybody an opportunity, a 1-minute opportunity to speak to the specific resolution. We are going to have that discussion period as a part of kind of our standard process when we vote, but I would encourage folks now to take their 1 minute at this time.
All right, I'll take my 1 minute now, I guess. I'll say that I don't, and I apologize, I've got food and I guess I can get on the video. I'm not eating. I'll say I don't know what the right solution is for governance. I don't know if any human being walking around on the face of the planet knows what the right solution is for governance. But I will say that I've been frustrated, like I think a lot of my neighbors, with what I consider to be very poor leadership citywide, Jacob Fry included in that. But the city council, I feel like, having quasi-executive leadership over certain city agencies has led to a number of inefficiencies in the city that have caused me to just be totally baffled this is the way that we choose to run our city. And I know from experience that, in my opinion, St. Paul, which has a strong mayor system, is much more user-friendly, it functions better, it's much more responsive. I don't know if that's the individuals or what that's involved, but for that reason, I simply can't support this amendment, because I do think that the strong mayor amendment would personally make this city a better place to live.
Other comments on this? Sarah?
I'll speak to this one. So I do support this resolution as written for reasons that Jerome has stated, as well as some of the points that are included in the rationale, which are that we know that voter turnout varies by race and income and geographic location. There are real systemic issues why people don't vote or cannot vote. And so I do think that that needs to be taken into account with representation. Something else that stands out to me about this amendment as compared to the other two amendments that are on our ballot this year is just who is bringing this forward and why now. So for example, this amendment was written by the Charter Commission, which we know is an unelected and unrepresentative committee of the city. Whereas for the second amendment, the Public Safety Amendment, that was very clearly brought in the wake of the MPD murder of George Floyd. And over 20,000 people in this city signed a petition to put that amendment on the ballot. For the third amendment, it's a renter-led coalition. So people who are most impacted by renting costs within the city, who have been advocating for tenant rights during this housing crisis, which the why now, because I think the housing crisis has been exacerbated by the pandemic. So the First Amendment focused on government structure. It does not appear to be an amendment of the people, and it does not meet this moment.
Thank you. Alice, I see your hand.
I'm with David. I don't know that we have good solutions to the best way to govern, but I have heard that every single department head in the city was so eager for this, they cleared their calendar so that they could meet with the Charter Commission to talk about it. Minneapolis is known for having more dysfunctional bureaucracy than other cities. Anyone who tries to do business with the city, it doesn't work very well. And it particularly doesn't work very well in times of crisis. And one could argue that because of the low turnout in some of those wards, that it's actually less democratic because the people who represent those wards are elected by fewer people. And having the city council is not locked out of power regardless. I mean, we're seeing a situation at the state where the legislature does not have legislative power, but they're about to fire our health commissioner in the middle of a pandemic. So there's absolutely no perfect system, but a system that can be more efficient, more effective, and can end up being more responsive in the long run, particularly during a pandemic or other emergencies. Just seems to make sense. And it's past time that this should be done in Minneapolis, I think. But there's no perfect solutions to this. And the best thing to do would be getting out the vote in all parts of the city, and making sure everybody feels like they have a voice. And that's part of the work we're going to have to do. On a broader sense, I'm just concerned with any of these amendments that when we take a position, we're going to end up dividing the community even further. And I'm not sure about the message that sends about wanting to be unified as we go forward. So that's my concern.
Thanks, Alice. Any other comments or things people would like to share?
There's a question in the chat.
Chris, yeah, thank you.
Oh, sorry. What happens to the city council if a strong mayor amendment passes? I guess I'm maybe going to kick this back to Josh as the kind of sponsor of this, if that's something that you could answer, Josh.
Yeah, and I'll try my best to answer this neutrally and not based on my own positions on the amendment. Under a strong mayor system, the city council does still exist. The city council would be limited in its role purely to legislative authority. And with the one exception that it does still have a role in approving initial appointments of department heads. But other than that, its role would be limited to legislation. It would not interact in directing staff. Where that gets somewhat complicated is when you talk about like high level policies, and then there can get to be some gray area. And is that policy and executive, or is that legislative? And that ultimately might need to get worked out and depend on the views of the particular mayor and council. But I think that's the best stab I can take at that question.
Thank you for the question. Any other discussion? So I guess maybe I'll just chime in here to say, as I believe is the only person who works for a government entity that's somewhat related to the city. I've seen how both efficient and inefficient government can be over a long time. I very much appreciate, as someone who has to work through a lot of the inefficiencies, and especially in the last few weeks, is dealing with projects and dealing with finance and dealing with purchasing, how challenging and how difficult it can be working through a bureaucratic system. I also know and also appreciate and also have seen in this city the role that bureaucracy, the role that council members take in ensuring equitable treatment of resources, of funding, of just general representation at the city, and that leads to inefficiencies. And I think sometimes, as we've talked about, and I know as we talked about after the murder of George Floyd, that that speed, right, and that inefficiency is oftentimes a conduit for white power, right? It's a conduit for the continuation of the thing that has always happened, and going slow is actually an opportunity. Inefficiency is actually an opportunity for more equity. I see that in my role as government. It's crazy. It's crazy frustrating. It's crazy stressful for me. but I also understand that there's a place for that and there's a purpose for that. And so that is, that is one of the reasons why I will be specifically supporting this resolution. So I will open it back up for any other discussion or any other comments that people would like to make right now. Seeing none, I guess, oh, Sarah, LR.
I have a process question. Are you looking for someone to call a question on this amendment and then move on to a discussion of the next? Or are you discussing all three and then pulling a vote on each? Okay.
I would like to, I guess I'm proposing, and I believe this is what we discussed. I'm proposing that we take votes one at a time. So we take a vote now essentially, and then move on to amendment 2 or question 2. So can I get a motion to move this proposed resolution?
Sure, I move the adoption of the resolution. Did you want me to read it again?
I think that's okay. I think we'll be good.
Okay.
We got it in front of us. Thank you though, Josh. Could I get a second?
Second.
Great. I guess I just for formality purposes, I will not formality purposes. I will open it up for any other final discussion. If anyone would like to say anything final, okay. I would, as I know that this will not be a straight line vote, I would encourage people to be very clear I believe BJ is going to be recording folks' votes. So I would encourage everyone to be very clear in how they vote here. So all in favor, please, if your screen is on, thumbs up. All opposed? And any abstentions? There is an abstention, BJ. I don't know if you saw.
I did not. Who abstained?
David S.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Could you not call out individual folks, BJ, but could you tell me the results of that?
8 in favor, 3 opposed, 1 abstention.
Okay.
And just to clarify, BJ, we do record with names for minutes.
Correct, we do. Yep.
Thank you, BJ. Okay, thank you, everybody, and I appreciate that discussion. I will move now on to question 2, and I believe, Jerome, you were going to introduce this, correct? Awesome, thank you.
I'll start by reading the proposed resolution. Whereas the Kingfield Neighborhood Association, KFNA, sees an urgent need for transformational change to community safety and policing in the city of Minneapolis. Whereas the current Minneapolis City Charter does not allow for that change and accountability. Whereas the community of Minneapolis and the Kingfield neighborhood should support this change in order to directly engage with the question of policing and safety. Whereas the need and responsibility to take bold action now is essential. Therefore, be it resolved that KFNA endorses a yes vote on the Department of Public Safety Charter Amendment. And for my 1 minute or 1 or 2 minute personal take, I'll be supporting this amendment as well, and this resolution. I think it is no secret that policing has been broken in our city for a long time. And I think there's also no secret that there are great ideas in the community about how it could be better. And I know that Minneapolis as a city has a lot of imagination to envision change and a lot of courage to go after it. But in this system, we lack the freedom to make that imagination a reality. There's been a lot of talk about what this amendment does and doesn't do. I think there's been a lot of scare tactics and disinformation around what it is and what it does and what it doesn't do. But as I see it, it does 2 very important things. It removes the stringent rules on the makeup of our public safety apparatus. These are rules that were set in place over 60 years ago that mandates the size and cost and structure of our law enforcement system. It's tied now to a decades old model that was put in place for a city that doesn't look like our city now. Minneapolis's immigrant population was 7% then, it's 15% now. We were 97% white in 1961. Now we're 63% white. And given the ways that policing impacts immigrants and communities of color, I think we should be allowed to shape a public safety system that reflects our current needs. The proposed amendment also gives the city council, a body that represents the totality of the city, more say in how our city experiences and envisions public safety. When now we have full mayoral control of the police, it leaves us to sort of pin our hopes on a single person, to have the right temperament and wisdom to guide that policy. And for reasons we talked about for Charter Amendment 1, it is not the most democratic way for us to think about public safety. In 2017, Ward 13 had more votes for mayor than wards 4 and 5 combined. And that's been true for every mayoral election since 1993, and probably before. So I don't think it makes sense for the whitest, wealthiest pockets of Minneapolis to have outsized power in determining who shapes public safety policies that tend to impact Black and Brown and immigrant communities the most. So I think it is good that public safety policy could be guided by a body that looks like Minneapolis and represents varied perspectives from across the city. I know people are nervous about this change for a lot of different reasons, but I think in the long term, if we recognize that this amendment is not a complete solution for what ails policing in Minneapolis, it is not even necessarily a dramatic shift. It is simply a way to clear a path towards what we need to be. It's not an overnight change. I think it's a change that will take the brakes off our imaginative drive to make the city better and safer in the long term. So I'll be supporting this resolution.
Thank you, Jerome, for that introduction. I will now open it up for discussion. If anyone would like to make a comment specifically on this proposed resolution, or ask questions, I think is another fair use.
If you don't mind, I'll say something briefly. So I have reservations about passing this amendment specifically, and I know Alice touched on this earlier, but I think if nothing else, we can all agree that this is probably the most controversial ballot measure that's been put before the voters in Minneapolis in quite some time. And I know many of my neighbors that are in favor of it. I know many of my neighbors that are opposed to it. I have some deep concerns about whether KFNA should take a position one way or another on something that's so controversial, especially when we're going to be relying in the future on the financial contributions of our neighbors more and more, with the city budget being for neighborhood organizations being reduced. And I think because of that, we need to be a body that thinks somewhat about being reflective of the views of our neighbors. I also think our role as board members is not necessarily to reflect our views as private individuals about what's best for the city, but rather to safeguard this organization. And I think this organization is best safeguarded from avoiding wading into or taking stances on contentious political issues. I think that the first resolution that we had was kind of emblematic of the spirit I'm talking about now, but I think all of us as Minneapolitans are fed up and we want transformative change in the city. But I think that KFNA is best used as a platform maybe to support various voices and encourage people to take positions. But I don't necessarily think that KFNA should play a role here. And because of that, regardless of my own personal views, I'm going to be voting no on this resolution.
Thank you, David. Any other, I see Katie's hand.
Yeah, so I want to share from my own perspective, but from the perspective of the workshops and meetings about community safety with neighbors in the past year that KFNA has been a part of hosting, and that many of us and other neighbors have been a part of hosting. And like other people have said, what I've heard in those spaces is a lot of common ground and energy on people, on our neighbors wanting change, especially on public safety. And Alice's resolution spoke really clear to this. We have been through a collective trauma. And in one of the community safety workshops that we held with a social worker, it was a workshop about trauma. I think we probably had about 50 or 60 neighbors who attended it. She taught us that the opposite of trauma is choice. And without changing our charter, we are just super limited in being able to pursue other choices when it comes to public safety, as Jerome described. I have dozens of conversations with people about this every week, and many of the ideas that people have both warm my heart and break it, because I know that if we don't change the charter, we can't actually do the things that people so desperately want to see us do in this city. And every week we see more and more reporting on examples of how that's the case. And based on the resolution we just passed at the beginning, there's just actually not a lot we can actually do to move forward together in pursuit of that resolution, given the limits the charter places on public safety. As has also already been stated, people really feel the lack of leadership in the city right now. Leadership is really hard right now. It's very needed. And we are some of those leaders, even if like recognizing that makes us uncomfortable at all. And even when it feels really complex to be a leader. And there are many organizations who are not discussing these amendments at all, even though they're allowed to do so. And we make a statement, even if we do not engage with the amendments, I think especially this one, because it's what's so deeply on our neighbors' hearts and minds, and in our mailboxes and in our Facebook feeds and all over our TVs. And I'm really glad that we are having the conversation and engaging in it, and grateful for our board members who brought these resolutions forward. And I support this resolution because I think being a leader in an organization like this means actively engaging in hard decisions to move through hard times together and to have the choices that get us through trauma. And I think that that's what Kingfield and the whole city deserves.
Thank you, Katie. I see Brighton's hand.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of echo some of the things Katie just said. I know we're focusing on question 2 right now, but this kind of relates to question 2 or 3. I spent a long time last night reading articles about rent stabilization and how those things are put into use in other cities, whether or not they've been successful, whether or not they've failed, whether or not they've helped the people they set out to help. And I read a lot about kind of the failings of rent stabilization. And one of the things I really came to is that these questions 2 and 3, at least, of these charter amendments aren't saying we're going to do this now, we're going to make these big shifts now. They're really just opening up a conversation and letting leaders in the city start to be able to put together ideas with community input. So I think as an organization saying this is our community input and people working about it, and even just having this discussion to challenge each other and think about these questions, that's doing a lot more than nothing. And I think when we vote no to questions 2 and 3, what we're saying is we're too scared to make changes because we're worried something bad might happen. So we're just going to stick with the same processes and systems we have. Well, bad things are already happening under those systems. So for me, like moving forward, whether or not there's the perfect solution by these things, what we're doing right now is so imperfect that any striving towards changing those things is a step in the right direction. And it's not massive shifts at this very moment, but if we don't say, hey, this needs to change, and we're going to speak out as leaders in the community, say it needs to change and allow for our governments to make those changes, we're just accepting and saying yes to everything that already is in place.
Thank you, Brighton. Other comments? Alice?
I've talked to a number of people, and I have many friends that feel passionately on all sides of this too. So I don't want to add too much, but what I hear from the people who are against this amendment is that it's not that they're against change or even transformative change, is that they've seen there's nothing really about how the process is gonna go to redesign the new design, and I just don't think that people believe that a lot of people believe this is the cart before the horse, that we could indeed be designing something and then put this to a vote. And I think we'd have a lot more consensus around something that was a real plan. But I don't even know what the plan for a plan is. And so that's more the concern. In my experience, you cannot make deep change that sticks unless you have a lot of consensus. And what has made me sad over the last 18 months is I think we have the potential of a lot of consensus, and we've not taken advantage of it. And instead we're divided. I'm hoping that as we go forward, however it turns out, I hope we do get the change that we want if the amendment doesn't pass. And I hope people don't give up and we still force the change if the amendment doesn't pass. I have to say that right. If the amendment passes, I hope that we have the leaders who will be able to put together a good process. If the amendment doesn't pass, I hope that we insist that that still happen. And so, you know, I'm focused on the future and getting something that will work and getting back to harnessing the consensus that I think we do have, and figuring out how to make up for lost time. But in any case, I'll be voting no. A lot because I'm not sure at this point that we're sending the right message by taking a vote on this, because there are good people on all sides of this who definitely want change. And I don't want to send a message to the community that just because you don't agree with us doesn't mean that we don't think you want to change.
Thanks, Alice. Other comments? I see Todd's hand.
Yeah, I'll speak up. I mean, I'll reflect kind of David's and Alice's comments, and here's why: is mine's a matter of trust, right? I think we all of us are wrestling with that. Who do we trust to take us forward? I quite frankly have been disappointed in my city council, the decisions they've made, tactics they've used. I reflect back onto just working with them on something simple as the time of sale energy policy that I've worked intimately with them to institute. And so I've had my experience in front of the city council. And trust is a real issue for me with our current city council. How are they going to execute this plan? I don't know. None of us know. Voting for change just for change's sake, I think is a mistake. I've never personally bought anything or believed in anything. I didn't know what the facts were before I jumped into it. And so that's what we're doing here. We're taking a leap of faith in our city council. We're going to trust them that they're going to lead us forward. The same is true with number 3 on here, rent control. And I've got a couple specific issues with that. But, you know, I would be happy to vote for a new city department that I knew how it was going to be executed. But, you know, if the city decides they have to have this and we're going to leave it up to a council to decide how to execute it, we'll see how that works out. I don't know. I'm certainly feeling at risk in my life. I also feel like we ought to be very careful here also politically. There's a lot of people that will use political power to their advantage in the future, and that could be our very own trusted officials. So I'm going to vote no on this also. Not that I'm opposed to change. I'm in favor of change. I moved into the city for a reason. I didn't stay in the suburbs because I was comfortable, and I'm not, you know, living an uncomfortable life is a good thing for me. So that's where I am.
Thank you, Todd. Other comments? Sarah T.
I'll speak. I do support this resolution. I think that when I look at these different amendments in front of us, representation, public safety, and housing really seem like the bread and butter of neighborhood organizations and what we have the opportunity to work on with our neighbors throughout the city. And so supporting this public safety amendment just feels like a key moment for our organizations throughout the city. I think that we are uniquely positioned, being situated within community to build those connections, to support one another, and making sure that we have the resources that we need to thrive and addressing the issues that we experience. These are the things that we do, and I really think that these are the things that we could do more of were we to pass this amendment and free up space to explore more ideas. So I could envision, well, passing the amendment would, first of all, remove stipulations that require a certain number of officers. We still have police officers, but we wouldn't have a particular number, which may provide some room in the city's budget for organizations like ours to do more of the good work that we already do. I think it also offers us as a neighborhood the opportunity to, if this passes, to be a leader and to facilitate some of those conversations about what do we need to keep us safe in our neighborhood. We are conveners with our neighborhood, within our neighborhood. And I think that neighborhoods have this real opportunity to be providing direct feedback and planning for what we can do to keep one another safe. So I think that supporting this resolution and the public safety amendment, it's directly on par with our mission as a neighborhood organization. And I think it's really in line with what we've been discussing over the past couple of years, just in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our efforts last winter with 100 Days of Community to really be talking to neighbors, to be building the block contacts as the trusted leaders on their blocks. I feel like this public safety amendment is directly in line with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Anyone else like to share? Josh.
So I've been trying to follow along some of the thoughts. So in regard to the comments about the plan, the city's attorneys have advised the council that they are not permitted to develop a plan in advance of the amendment, because doing that could be viewed as supporting the amendment, and using city staff time for that is not permitted under state law. But I would encourage you to speak with individual council members and individual council candidates on their individual plans. Many of them have given this a great deal of thought. Some others have said they don't trust the current city council, and that's fine. I do trust the current city council for what it's worth. But more importantly, I trust the people of Minneapolis to elect city council members of their choice, and to elect, we elect our leaders to develop these policies. I also agree that this amendment is only a starting point, that we need to continue to work to adopt changes in our system of public safety. I also wanted to address the subject of not taking a stance. So I think something being divisive is not just a reason not to have the conversation. Discussions about public safety and policing will always be divisive. Nonetheless, they are critical conversations for our city and our organization to have. It is all well and good to say we want transformative change, but that means at some point we need to support changes. If the board decides the change we want to support is not this amendment, that's fine. But then we need to really think about what changes we do support.
Thank you, Josh. Other comments or questions? So the one thing that I just wanted to share quickly, and I don't know if I've shared this ever on a recording or in a public meeting, in the winter of 2019, I think the fall or the winter of 2019, this is before most of you were on the council. I think it might have just been me and Sarah T, I believe, and maybe, I think this, and David. We had a member of the, we used to get updates from the police. We used to have our community safety officer come and give crime statistics every quarter. They were, I would say, unproductive at the best, openly racist, and fear-mongering. I won't even say at the worst. It's what they were. We had a particularly bad incident on the third quarter, the winter of 2019, where a community safety officer came and made some pretty terrible statements about crime, about Somali families, about crime as they relate to Black people and Somali women. It was terrible. I've heard from other board members about being upset, not speaking at those, like really challenging that at the meeting. after that meeting, Sarah and I talked. We were talking as an executive committee, and I had written some stuff. We ended up not really taking a stance on it, not really putting it out publicly, and then George Floyd was killed. It's a regret that I have for not taking a stronger stance, not pushing more, putting something out there and kind of saying, yeah, this is what I believe, and then getting some pushback and saying, no, we don't want KFNA to take that stance. We don't want to go out there. What about the folks that really respect the police or that really believe? And that is a different scenario than what we're taking on here today, but it's something that I think we as individuals, we as a board, in my opinion, as others have spoken to, need to step up in these scenarios and need to take bold and thoughtful action. And I believe that is a position the board should and can and hopefully will take. So that's me. Any other discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, could I ask somebody to move this?
I move the motion.
In a second.
Second.
Discussion? Any final words? Okay, as I mentioned last time, please be very clear on your votes. All those in favor, please, aye, thumbs up in the screens. Opposed? And abstentions. Any questions, BJ?
Nope. So it is 9 approving the motion, 3 opposing, and 1 abstention. 1 more than number 1 because L'Oreal joined us after.
Great. Okay. Thank you, everybody, again for that discussion. I know that this isn't easy, and I know that typically we have votes that are barely, we get to vote 13-0, and I know that this isn't that, and I think that this is still meaningful. It's not, it's definitely meaningful. And so I appreciate everyone's, respect and discussion through this. So moving on to the third, or really the fourth and final resolution, and I believe Brighton, that was one you were taking.
All right, I'll just read the proposed resolution. Whereas the Kingfield Neighborhood Association, KFNA, recognizes the housing crisis in Minneapolis, whereas KFNA supports making all tools available to respond to the housing crisis, whereas renters and underrepresented communities are leading the effort to support rent stabilization efforts, whereas the need and the responsibility to take bold action is now essential. Therefore, it be resolved that KFNA endorses a yes vote on the Rent Stabilization Charter Amendment. One thing that I'd like to point out, I know you guys all got the documents for this with this text in it. This amendment to the charter does not pass any specific rent stabilization matters. All it does is allow the city council to review potential opportunities and solutions to the housing crisis. So a lot of these, there's a couple different processes. I am personally unclear about whether or not the city council has to put to a vote any rent stabilization matters, or if it's just certain matters that are put to a vote. Josh might have some more information on this. I'm not sure. But just to reiterate, this isn't anything like St. Paul is doing with a 3% cap on rent increases or anything. It's only saying that the city council can look at those tools, put it up to a vote in a very initial step forward.
Great. Thank you, Brighton. Any discussion or comments or questions that anyone has?
So I'll just put on my lawyer hat momentarily and tell you all, much like I think the second charter amendment has some legal issues, this one absolutely has legal issues. The current state law, I'll give you the citation, it's 471.9996. This is state law. It prohibits a city from passing a rent control measure unless the voters, i.e. us, we get a specific ordinance that controls rent and we vote on it to approve it. Like Brighton said, we're not voting on something that controls rent. St. Paul is. What St. Paul is doing satisfies the state law. What this law does, what this amendment would do rather if it passes, is it would give the city the authority to either adopt a rent control or propose a rent control measure and pose it to the voters for a vote. That would be legal under the state law. It also gives them the apparent authority to be able to draft a rent control measure, go through the comment period, and then enact it as an ordinance without a vote by the community. If that happens, and you have to think that the city council is doing this because they already have the first option available to them under the state law. The second option is not, because it violates state law. So if they pass that, if the amendment passes, you would think that they're gonna go through the legislative comment period and then pass it into legislation. What is very, very likely to happen, in my personal legal opinion, under an unambiguous statute, it will be overturned by the court. It will not be allowed to be enacted into law. What the city council should do, and what would be more transparent to do, there are good rent control measures and there are bad rent control measures. The city could draft one, the council could draft one and pose it to the voters for a vote like St. Paul is doing, and then we can actually vote on the measure. That is what they should do. It's crazy incompetent not to do it that way, but yet that's what they're doing. And they know this legal opinion. It is not secret to them, but they're doing this anyways. It's madness. That's why I will be voting no.
I see Josh's hand.
So I've read the legal opinions from the city's attorney on this matter as the council advised on it. And Director Robbins is correct that there is a dispute over whether it is legal for the council to adopt a rent stabilization ordinance on its own without submitting it to voters. The charter amendment here provides two pathways, one where the council would adopt the ordinance and the other would be submitted to voters. What I would like to clarify is that the reason why it's not being done the same way as St. Paul is that there actually is no mechanism in the Minneapolis City Charter right now to be able to submit an ordinance directly to voters. And there also is no provision for that in state law. It requires that under the rent stabilization statute, but there is no provision for ballot questions in cities under state law. That has to be adopted in a city charter, which again, we do not currently have. So in order to do what is being suggested, in order to submit a ordinance to the voters that voters could vote on for rent stabilization, it would be necessary for this amendment to be adopted. Moving on to the merits of the amendment, I feel somewhat awkward being here to represent the views of renters on this board, since I'm a renter, because I have no personal animosity toward my landlord. I enjoy my place. I find the rent to be affordable for my means, but I know this is not the case for everyone in the city. I'm not an expert in all means of rent stabilization and affordable housing. But I know that there are such experts in the city ready to engage the council in this work. Once again, we elect our council members to adopt these policies. I also do not think this is the only solution to providing affordable housing for all people in Minneapolis, but I do think that granting the council this authority is one piece of the puzzle.
Thank you, Josh. Other comments on this? Sarah T.
I'll speak to this one. I'm in support of this resolution. as I stated earlier, this work of rent stabilization is a renter-led initiative. And so I think that this is a big opportunity for us as a neighborhood organization to stand with our neighbors who need to rent or who choose to rent. And one of the topics that we'll be talking about later in the meeting this evening is about our equitable engagement proposal for funding with the city, which is specifically looking at ways that we can increase our engagement with people who rent in this neighborhood, which is actually a significant amount of people. The Minnesota Compass data from 2019 shows that 34.5% of people in Kingfield are people who rent. So that represents close to 1,200 households. And of those renter households, 41%, so about 489 of those households are currently cost burdened. I know that there are several neighborhood organizations that are part of the coalition of folks working on rent stabilization within the city. And personally, I would love to see KFNA support this. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Todd, did I see your hand? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to speak against this from the real estate community. I'm guessing that maybe none of you are actually investors and owners of rental property in Kingfield. You have to realize that voting for something, again, for the unknown and imposing the duty upon the backs of investors is going to change their opportunities moving forward and their investment choices in the city. If we're voting just broadly for rent stabilization or rent control and asking them to shoulder that cost in society, that's certainly, a wonderful thing to do as an investor, but driving their profits down, their reinvestment into the property. We already have challenged properties in Minneapolis. We've recovered beautifully from the 2008 real estate meltdown, and people are investing back in this city. But they also are investing in rentable quality units and providing stable housing already to the community. If, let's just say, property taxes go up 5%, 7%, but an unknown and rent stabilization limits it at 3%, there's a cost problem there. Investors are going to shy away from Minneapolis. We've changed our zoning now to allow multiple units to be built, but developers are not going to build them. They're not going to come into Minneapolis, into Kingfield and do infill projects. It just doesn't make sense for the investor. So as a realtor, as a real estate community, there are many, many ways we can supply funding to those 480 families to pay their rent in other ways. But as sheltering or having the investor take on the cost of this is ridiculous in my mind. And I'm guessing none of you are actually investors. I don't know, but we're making a decision here in the city where we're going to limit the investment in the city. And that's the wrong move to make when we have to recover from a riot in many parts of the city that need new investment. So I'll be voting no on this.
Thanks, Todd. Any other comments specifically on this or questions?
Can I have any more time since I presented?
if you want a minute, yeah, please take a time.
My husband and I are homeowners and we've rented our house out for years at a time. So it's been our own property that we've invested in. And in my research last night, talking with people about this over the last couple of years, I've lived in New York and Seattle and seen a lot of really bizarre housing problems and responses to it. I think the understanding, and I'm hearing what you're saying, David and Josh, of just my understanding of this charter amendment is that it sets up a path to be able to vote upon rent stabilization measures. And I think addressing housing crisis through multiple ways to stabilize those are really good ideas. I really hear what you're saying, Todd, though, because there are a lot of really bad ways to do this. And I understand the hesitations. yeah, I guess that's kind of what I'm saying, is that there's ineffective and bad rent stabilization, and there's really good like programs and ideas that are out there. I wish that there was a very like bright line about exactly what this charter amendment would allow the city council to do, because if it's putting it to a vote, that seems great, and the fact that we can't do that now seems problematic. I guess that doesn't really address much, but
Thank you, Brighton. Are there any other comments folks have? I guess maybe like I saw a comment that you had, David. I don't know if you want to speak again. If you wanted to speak again to address specific things, feel free.
I'll just say that there are people out there that believe the council has the power to pose this question like an actual ordinance as it stands. That's not a settled legal belief about what the council has the power to do. I do think it is pretty clear though, if the council passes it and goes through the legislative process without posing to the voters, that they do not have that authority under state law. Whether we hope it they do or they don't, they just don't.
Thank you, David. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay. I will keep my comment very brief. I think one of the things that we've talked about in this neighborhood, and I think feel like we have done an okay job at doing, at least being conscious of it, is engaging with, reaching out to, and supporting renters in Kingfield from this board. And so I see that this as an extension of that. I also view this in the frame that Brighton mentioned it as a pathway and as a ability to move forward. And as Josh mentioned earlier, as elected representatives of all of the people of the city of Minneapolis, while I disagree with things that our council does, that our council member does, I believe that we as a people, through both engagement with and pushing of our elected officials, can create policies that are that consider the externalities of a possible rent control policy with the positives of a positive and thoughtful rent stabilization policy. So I will be voting yes in terms of this. So I will open it up for any other final discussion. And then we will be almost done with votes. Alice, I see your hand. Oh, Alice, you're muted. Sorry. Oh, Alice, you're muted still.
I don't know how I'm going to vote on this actually personally, but I think I'm still going to vote no on the resolution. But I'm still thinking about how I will vote in the actual vote, because this may be a tool. And we'll have to see when something actually comes up. But again, I think we can make a positive effort for change. And there are times to take a moral stand. So I don't mean to imply that there aren't, but I'm not sure that this is the time, because I think there are moral stands on all sides of all of these issues. So I will still be voting no. So
thank you, Alice. Any other comments that folks would like to make? Okay. Oh, Todd.
I jump back in. I just want to be clear that, I mean, I support affordable housing also, but you have to understand that if rent stabilization comes into place and there are limits placed on the increased amount of rent every year, we're just simply taxing the property owner to sustain those rents. You know, you and I are not paying that cost for housing in society. We're all going to continue to gain the equity on our own private residences and the equity that we're earning in our properties, but the investor is not going to earn the return on those properties. So we're going to seriously begin to limit the investment in the city by taking a position here, if that passes. So I know that's not where we're taking a position on from the community here, but I'm speaking broadly against this as it has not worked in other cities. And so we're giving license to, again, elected officials to make decisions on behalf of people that are going to be taxed. And those people are not us. We're taking a position here that those people that we're going to tax are not you and I. And so that's an easy way to solve for a problem when we're not paying the bill. So that's my personal opinion.
Thank you, Todd. Any final comments? If we could keep them brief, because I was really worried that we were going to run way over time, and we've only run kind of over time. So I appreciate that. Okay. I would then ask for a motion to move this resolution to a vote.
Move to call the question.
Can I see a second?
Second.
Great. Quick discussion, if you can keep it 10 seconds. Great. Okay, all in favor, please, again, be clear with a thumbs up or a comment in the chat or a emoji. You good, BJ? Okay, opposed? And any abstentions? And I will wait for BJ to tally.
All right, it is 8 in favor, 3 opposed, 2 abstain.
So that adds up. Okay, great. Thank you, BJ, and thank you for your help. I just want to say quickly in closing, I appreciate everybody's comments. I appreciate this discussion. I know it's not easy, and I know I would just encourage everybody. We are stronger as a neighborhood when we have these discussions. In my belief, we are stronger as a board when we talk openly and frankly about these things. And I know that there's different opinions on this board. I believe we are stronger as a board, and why I put these items that were brought by board members on the agenda. We are stronger as a board when we take stances on issues that both affect our community and the folks that live in it. So wanted to say that again, appreciate all of you. I appreciate everybody's comments on all sides of this. And so thank you for engaging, and specifically thank you for the folks who brought these resolutions, including and especially Alice, who brought kind of the opening resolution, which I would encourage everyone to go back and read and reflect on and think about as we move forward, both as a board and as Alice reflects on as a community here in Minneapolis. So thank you. After that meaty and heavy discussion, I will kick it over to, I think this is going to you, Sarah LR, right? Around finance.
Kind of the opposite discussion, yes. So the first item that I would like the board to review and consider approval of is a 990. The link that I just put in the chat links to this federal document that KFNA as a nonprofit has to submit every year. Our finances are simple enough that we can file the easy form. The numbers that you see on the first page of this basically roll forward from pages further back that give you slightly more detail into the functioning of the organization. Most of the things that this form is looking for, KFNA is not involved in. And so it doesn't raise flags to file a more complicated form. Things that the federal government is looking for is stuff like unrelated business income tax, Are we doing things that are outside our mission that we should be charging tax for and that we're not? They're looking for basically outside program related income. So this is just a breakdown of our expenses and our revenue in a pretty basic format. There were two other documents with this in your packet. One is simply an electronic filing form that on approval of this document, I will do an e-signature with the accountant, and this will be sent into the federal government. And the other is our annual charitable organization registration that goes to the state to stay in good standing with the Secretary of State. Are there questions?
This is going to sound like a weird question, but what's the name of our accountant, or what firm do they work for that prepares our 990?
We work with a gentleman whose name is Michael Wilson. We have worked, we are provided an accountant through the city. So people and firms can apply to the city of Minneapolis to be one of the servers. We've worked with Michael in the past. This year, he's the only person who was approved just because COVID sort of botched up the application process. So he's basically doing all the neighborhoods. We have worked with different firms in different years.
And we're required to, we can't have, like, if we had someone that was able to do the 990 for free, is that an option that we could take advantage of?
I've never asked that question.
Okay.
Because it's one of the things the city gives us, and we generally say thank you.
The city, we're not paying for it then out of, okay.
Correct.
That's my main question. Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. Could you explain why there are like previous board members on here?
Yeah, because it's the past year.
Gotcha. Okay.
So KFNA operates on a fiscal year that's June 1st through May 31st. And so this is due within a number of months after the fiscal year, but it accounts for the previous fiscal year when you guys weren't board members.
Yeah. So on that note, I don't know if this matters, but it actually does list me and Brighton and Todd. And I don't think we started until after May 31st.
May 31st, which year?
2021. I think we started in July, I want to say.
2020. I'm trying to think if he rolled in both years because we crossed years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Josh, you're muted.
Josh, you're muted.
My point is that if it's through May 31st of this year,
13, 14, 15, 16, 17. He rolled both years in here.
But they started this year, Sarah.
we wouldn't be on until next year.
I can ask. Correct. You would also be on it next year. That is true. For some reason, he included both years because there's 17 board members listed in this listing, which is not accurate. So there was a crossover. So he added 1 year and the next chunk of board members.
And I did just confirm you guys were, I'm looking at our agenda from July. That we have an item called seating new board members. So that was when, I'm assuming there weren't names on that, but I'm assuming that's when you guys were seated.
Of this year, 2021.
4 months ago.
Wow, you haven't been on the board very long.
I know for me and Todd, it feels like longer since we started attending before that, but
He needs to change it to add BJ as secretary. He's taking away BJ's title, his royal title.
How about this? I can ask Mike if it's a big deal, if he somehow commingled 2 different board terms and years on that. If it is not a big deal, I would recommend we submit as is. If it is a big deal, we can modify that page and submit it with the proper board and terms. Oh, you have no idea why that happened.
It could be that those board members who were not on the board for this period wouldn't want their names on there. I mean, not that there's probably any exposure, but you know, why take exposure for being responsible for something that they weren't?
Yeah.
So if I were those board members, I maybe would want my name off.
it's really not a big deal to me. I was just pointing it out because it seemed odd.
I don't care at all.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed the beginning part of that discussion, but I think we're. Any other discussion on the 990?
I'm gonna ask for clarification why we have 2 years of board members smashed in together.
And I think especially because the date on that 990 says May, right? And we wouldn't have had ending May 31st. We wouldn't have had, like Josh and Brighton and Todd wouldn't have been on the board May 31st.
Correct. And it might have been, I sent him both terms and we don't specify in our board list when people are seated.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are just called the 21-22 year on the board list, so.
Okay. Sarah, did you need a specific, I guess the request would be, we have to look at that. And so we can't make them, I guess we could make a motion. Are you asking for a, sorry.
I would ask for a motion that the board approve this with me getting an answer to that and either having it corrected if there's any reason that it should be a certain term of board members, or submitting it as is, since anyone else whose name doesn't seem to really mind and will be on next year anyways.
Okay.
Moved.
I hear a so moved.
I'll second that.
Get a second. Discussion. All in favor? Thumbs up. Yes in the chat. Opposed and abstentions. Cool. You got more stuff, Sarah, right?
I do. I have to find it. The equitable engagement and neighborhood network applications are in the packet, and I lost my link.
Two computers.
Yeah.
I can't share it with you.
Dang. I'm hoping, how about we start with this? I'm hoping that people had a chance to read these 2 applications. While I'm searching for a document to post in here, is there like a resounding yes that people read these?
Sarah, are you talking about you're talking about the Equitable Engagement Fund application, right?
The application and the Neighborhood Network Fund application, which was just added yesterday.
Okay, the first one is in the chat. Jerome, was that second one the other one that Sarah's looking for?
The one that I linked was the Equitable Engagement Fund application that was in the agenda.
Cool. Let's talk about that first then. So this is the pot of money that the city of Minneapolis, we've been talking about this for 6 months, has developed a formula and divided between the neighborhood associations in Minneapolis to do equity work. Kingfield's pot of money is roughly $8,500. It is supposed to be targeted to doing work with traditionally underrepresented groups. So by looking at the census, we have an underrepresented group of neighbors in Kingfield that are renters. So looking at getting this 34.5% of people more involved in the neighborhood. And then the other group we looked at, which I thought was an interesting group to slightly different. Yes, we have a share of renters that are cost burdened, but we also have a larger share of homeowners who are cost burdened in our neighborhood. And it just sort of felt like we should figure out who they are. I'm assuming it's people who've lived in the neighborhood long enough that the taxes are sort of kicking them in the butts and their housing values or their housing repairs are, or they're retired and don't have income anymore. So it's pretty real that on a budget of $8,500, we're limited in what we can do. We did present a plan to the city that included door knocking and outreach and trying to find ways to connect directly to these residents, increasing our outreach methods to try to reach more diverse groups. So basically, that's what this plan lays out. The drafts of these were run through the recruitment group. I didn't receive feedback from the members of the recruitment group for the months it sort of passed through them. So I just sort of kept going down this path. Thoughts, comments?
Is it going to be edited?
Not intended to be.
Okay. There's a number of typos and grammar errors that we should probably clean up.
Cool.
When do we need like a final kind of thing by, Sarah?
It's due on Friday.
Got it. Okay.
Sarah, can you clarify? I think one of the application forms that I looked at had examples of metrics to measure outreach with. And they had reach 10 cost burden households in 2022 and like examples like that. Is that something that the city is requiring? Is that something that we might consider adding to this?
I don't know.
Are they requiring it is the first question. And would it be something that would be helpful?
I sent this to the city a week ago and said, is this what you're looking for? The guidance has been super vague. And they basically said, yeah, that works. So they're not looking for stronger metrics.
Okay, that's helpful, but it could be something that we might decide to do as an internal plan.
I think as an internal plan, it's always a good idea to keep track of how many doors you knock on, how many are answered. Is that an effective strategy to be knocking on doors? If not, let's not keep doing it. Let's figure out other things to do that connect, to the people on the street. It's one of the issues I have with door knocking right now. there's a pandemic, you know, do people even answer doors anymore? You know, so I think us keeping track of what we're doing is important. Us keeping track of the blocks that we're going out and door knocking on and what the response is important. Mackenzie's door knocked, I think 4 blocks now. She's found like the pro strat is to go with a neighbor. So, I mean, that might be something we want to consider even on blocks that have higher renters. We know someone on almost every block right now. You know, if we can get a connection to go door knock, we can get every door to open for us.
And I would add that even on the handful of blocks that we don't have a block contact, like we have somebody on like the next block. So I think we could easily cover all of them.
Yep. So again, yes, this is due to the city on Friday. There is no grace period. It gets submitted with the plan, which was due a month ago. And that's what it is. This proposal is partnered with the Neighborhood Network Fund, which is considered the base funding for administrative costs for neighborhoods. That is also in your packet.
This is maybe a dumb question that I should have the answer to, Sarah, but this isn't additional funding. This is kind of like, this is a part of the suite of funding that the city's offering. That's all. I know that they're different buckets, but like,
yeah,
as we viewed in the past as kind of like base funding, correct?
Yes.
This isn't like I view that like partnership fund as a separate, like, oh, if you partner with an organization, that's kind of like a separate.
Yes. So this partnered with the Neighborhood Network Fund equals about $23,000. That is Kingfield's budget next year.
Got it. Okay.
That's it. And so we've been kind of calling them the same, super obnoxiously, and we're all yelling at the city for it. They had separate applications. They have separate reporting. They have completely different requirements, and they have repetitive questions. I'd like to send them a bill for how much time it took to put this together.
I'll just mention that we're running really far behind schedule.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would like to maybe do, David, because you pointed it out, would you be willing to scan through this and make some language adjustments quickly?
Yeah, I think actually it seemed like it was a team effort. We all just kind of ran through it and made some changes.
Hey.
Okay,
Thanks,
you.
Al.
Thank you for calling out time too. So I guess you need a motion on this, correct, Sarah?
I do.
Okay. Could we get a motion to approve the Equitable Engagement Fund as currently is written, plus any kind of future adjustments that Sarah feels are necessary?
So moved.
Some of the language. David, so moved. Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Yes, thumbs up. Opposed and abstentions. Thank you. Another item, Sarah?
Yep. So basically the same is an application in here called Neighborhood Network Fund application. It's short. I can put the link up. It asks a lot of the same questions. It's a little bit snarkier in tone because I was tired of it by this time. So this application is for $15,000, which is considered the administrative funding for the organization. The budget, if you look at it, is pretty bare bones. in the Equitable Engagement Fund, I did a split budget and basically wanted just to call out to the city how much they really should be funding us. As a side note, I did talk to Mayor Fry at our event on Saturday and emphasize the point that this is not the way to support neighborhoods in the city, and they can't expect us to do equitable engagement work if they're not providing the back support for our organizers on the street and money for communications and money for phone in an office, you know? So the bear with this is a pile of documentation that you guys don't have to go through. It was every single policy. It's in a folder on here, but it's basically 10 different policies that had to be pulled together from the organization, and board lists and proof of insurance and all this stuff that also has to be submitted with this application on Friday. 2 policies of that we don't have time for tonight. We've been given a grace period. We can look and approve those in November.
Okay, so do you need this approved tonight? Just to-
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on this? It seems like people are scanning it quickly. I guess just for the sake of time, I would ask that if we do look at this, make some final edits, make some adjustments, and then we approve this with those final adjustments and edits.
Just so people are aware, the grant language of these was not approved until the last week of August. So I know you're getting it in the 11th hour. It was also released to communities to pull together at the 11th hour.
Mhm. Any comments or questions? I hate to go quickly through this, but. None. I know folks are reading it. I guess I would encourage maybe if folks feel comfortable, passing this as it currently is with any kind of adjustments or additions that board members would like to make. And when was this due again, Sarah? Is this Friday?
Friday morning, 9 a.m.
Okay. Any questions, comments? No. People feel comfortable passing this? Can I get like a rough shake of head? Yes, thumbs up. Okay. A shrug is also fine too. Okay. Can I get a motion then, please?
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Jerome. Discussion. All in favor? Aye, yes, thumbs up. No, and abstentions. Okay, thank you. I would encourage if anyone wants to read through that quickly and make any final adjustments to it, please do that. And
Tonight would be great. I'll be
Yep.
working on stuff tomorrow morning. So if you send edits.
okay. And this cost share
Yeah.
contract is another thing we got to approve, right, Sarah?
Yep. So just a reminder, currently Kingfield is operating under an employee share agreement with Lindale for my services working with Lindale. It was originally contracted as 30 hours a month at $1,800 to KFNA. With this as one of the burdens, with a lot of organizational headaches going on at Lindale, they actually want to double that contract and contract with me for up to 60, estimated at 60 hours a month for $3,600 to Kingfield through June of next year. I told them I would welcome that money, that employee share agreement, so it comes back to you guys.
So why is this not just a contract amendment extending the term and increasing the hours and the?
I think it is.
Is it the thing that I clicked on?
It's the exact same contract with double the money and double the estimated time that it's based on.
Yeah, easier way to do it, but
What, to amend the contract?
yeah, just to have like a simple, like, you know, this doesn't have to be signed right now, right?
They wanted it backdated to August 1st. So if Kingfield wants to get paid.
Okay.
So I scrolled through it quick. It updates the dates. It changes the amount from 1,800 to 3,600, and it changes the hours from 30 to 60.
Mhm.
So it's technically now a new contract
Oh,
as drafted. It makes more sense to have it the same old contract and just have what's called an amendment, which would be a one-page document.
we could do that. LNA doesn't care.
Yeah. I mean, remember that whole like lease issue where she kept on having us sign new leases and the liability cut off? Remember, it's the same thing here. It's just rather than having a new contract and then you could,
Okay,
yeah, it just, you and I can work together on it
perfect.
if you want. And I mean, it'll take me 2 seconds and I can draft it and I can email it to everybody else. But all it will do is say, this hereby amends the contract, new date, new amount of money, and new hours.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Is there any questions or comments from the board about I very much appreciate that, David. Thank you so much. Is there any comments about like the substance of the change in time and hours? This is something that Sarah's brought to the executive committee. The executive committee has discussed it with Sarah. I don't want to speak for other executive committee members, but I believe we are, comfortable with it, and have asked questions of Sarah and how this would balance versus with KFNA's time and that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess I would just open it up if anyone has any questions about the substance of this change.
My only question is, are we planning on doing an e-vote for this instead of waiting until the next board meeting?
So since we already know all of the changes and it's really just a matter of having David and Sarah draft up a slightly different document for them, like I'm comfortable moving ahead on it now. The understanding being that a document will be drafted that'll say the changes are, these are the new dates, this is the new amount, these are the new hours.
I think it's easier with an amendment to a contract.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? I think if that sounds good to other folks, I would encourage us to do that, to not have to do an e-vote. But it would be the board supporting this contract as it's in its substance and giving kind of direction to both staff and with assistance of non-legal counsel to help draft it up. So I guess, could I get a motion on that if there's no other discussion?
Move that.
In a second.
Second.
All in favor, or I guess I should say discussion, all in favor? Yeah. Opposed? And abstentions? Okay. Great. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for Sarah for bringing that stuff. We are crazy behind now. So I guess the most important thing on the agenda that we have next that we wanted to do, and I feel bad because this was for Kenzie, was to talk quickly about kind of this upcoming winter. we were going to do kind of a board breakout, talk a little bit about this upcoming winter. What events, what things should we be doing? What are the board priorities going forward? And so I guess if it's possible, could we, maybe I'll just ask the board, like, do we want to do that right now as a big board? And then folks can take 5 minutes and enter some ideas in here. I think the goal, as Sarah's written, is that Kenzie's going to go out and talk with block contacts and to kind of like, as this reads, set her up for success, be able to say, someone comes and says, oh yeah, we're interested in this. And then we can say, oh yeah, the board really would support that. Or here's kind of some really similar thing that we could tie you in on, and having kind of these threads that we can pull community members into. So that was kind of the idea behind this, as similar brainstorms and similar kind of things that we've done in the past, with saying like, what should we do this summer? What events do we prioritize? That was kind of the purpose of this discussion. So in the next 5 minutes, it's going to take us 5 minutes to break out into groups. So I'm just going to say we're not going to break out into groups. But in the next 5 minutes, can people start throwing ideas out there? I'm assuming somebody could very nicely take quick notes in that notes folder, or the notes. I'm losing my words. The notes document that we have, that would be great. And I'll start. One of the things that we had done that I think had been fairly successful in the past, that like our previous years had done, like a family engagement committee had done, especially in the MLK Park is super busy in the summer, but in the winter, oftentimes there's not a lot of folks there. But pulling people together on the weekends, they did like hot chocolate and sledding events that I think were pretty successful and that a lot of people went to. So it'd be great to, whether that's that or other kind of events in the park that are pulling people together, would be really awesome. So I'll open it up to other folks. Encourage everyone just to throw out any idea, community building thing that they have.
Hey, Chris, can we
Yeah.
just do like a mandated rapid fire of ideas? Like, I would recommend people just yell stuff out. I'll try and write it down and we can like hash it over later.
Yep.
Okay,
David took his mic off, so he's got to go.
good.
I was thinking, I don't know if we've ever done this in the past, but if someone gets hurt or is out of town or something like that, and they're not able to shovel their walk, we should have a way to reach out to neighbors and be like, can you shovel my walk? And we have pinch hitter shovelers.
Cool. Another one.
Have a Kingfield jump in the hole in the lake day.
Okay, another one.
I do a lot of winter biking, and I know that's not as popular as some people, so something around winter biking.
I was just gonna say the same thing. There you go. Winter bike parade or something. Yeah.
Okay, another idea.
I would like to see Light Up Kingfield again this year.
Okay,
A Kingfield snowman competition where people build the best snowmen and they show off their snowmen.
okay.
Holiday decorating challenge.
That's Light Up Kingfield, kind of.
Light up.
Make it a contest though. Yeah. The one house on 40th is going to win automatically. So
With the tree through the porch?
well, that's the other one. Oh, they might
That's-
take the other house on 40th for a run for their money.
That one's so good.
L'Oreal, haven't heard from you.
I can email you my ideas. I don't have, sorry, I'm like going through like a death in the family, so I'm not all here,
Oh,
but
no, I'm sorry.
I'll email you some ideas.
Okay,
There's also 2 holidays we could do decorating challenges for. Some people get really into Halloween decorations too.
I biked past a house the other day that has 50 pins in there.
who have we not heard from? Sarah?
I really want to find a neighbor who's awesome at zines to do an online zine workshop.
I've got that neighbor.
Yay!
Well, we can talk.
Okay, Alice?
Oh, Alice, you're muted.
I would like to second the light up the neighborhood and decorating.
Who else hasn't gone? Katie?
Went in the chat.
Ah,
I haven't gone. I don't like winter. So anything with hot chocolate in it is a huge win for me.
Anyone else? Okay. Those are some good ideas. I think it'll be interesting to see, especially if we can, with indoor events or not being able to hold indoor events, how that works. One of the ideas I kind of had too is if we could do a movie outside in the middle of winter, right? That had hot chocolate and people could build snow chairs and stuff. So got to embrace it. Okay. Anything else anyone wants to share quickly? I would also encourage sharing stuff with Kenzie to give her kind of more ammunition as she goes out and talks with folks and engages block contacts, because I think the goal is to really get block contacts. We've had some success in this and getting folks into KFNA, leading things, taking it on, putting up the events, all that sort of stuff that I think we want to continue. So
I just remembered that the only zine I own is a how-to winter bike zine. Just so you know.
awesome. Okay, I have stuff written down.
cool.
The other one we did last year was a holiday cookie swap.
Mm.
Do that again.
So I would say if people come up with other ideas, I'll be working with Kenzie to try and put these together in some sort of form to roll out to Black leaders and cool.
Okay, awesome. Thank you everybody for doing that very quickly. And sorry we ran out of time. I'm going to move on quickly so we try to get out of here on time to board report out. Katie, you're still first on the list. Sorry. You can pass.
There's some beautiful trees beginning to change, and I'm loving the fall colors.
Thank you. Becky?
I had a great trip to Poland a couple weeks ago, and it was so fun to travel, and I can't wait to do some more of it. That's about it.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm next. If anyone saw the fun picture of the crazy line striping that went around up on Victory Memorial, that is my project. So it's funny to you. It is a nightmare to me. So I'm glad you all enjoyed it. If you want me to share the picture with you.
Yes.
Fixed. It's getting fixed. We're working through it. So anyway, that's been my last 4 days and it has been very challenging. That's my update. Alice?
We're excited. We had a good trip to Chicago to see family we haven't seen, and we're headed out to DC to do the same thing next week. So we're excited to be out traveling again and seeing family again.
Awesome. Josh?
Yeah, so I've been working hard on charter forum stuff. We'll be having a forum coming up, posting in the YouTube link. People can also attend in person at Mayflower Church if they want. And It'll be an hour and a half, with a half hour on each of the amendments, and there will be groups from both sides speaking on them. And then after the event, for those who attend in person, there will be an informal tabling thing where people can talk to the different organizations. So really excited for that.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. Brighton?
I just want to say I'm so sorry for missing the social hour thing. I got really sick and was in bed for 3 weeks. It wasn't COVID, it's a whole thing. And then my grandfather, who I was really close to, passed away. So it's been a rough month.
Oh,
So I'm sorry that I missed that. On a lighter note, it's my birthday and I'm going to go to Olareba after this meeting. So yay.
happy birthday.
Thank you for coming to a board meeting on your birthday. Happy
What else could I possibly want to be doing?
Jerome.
Bad timing, Brighton, but I was just so excited to see everybody at our get together. There's a lot of folks that I hadn't met in person, but have seen over Zoom for a while. So it was really good. And we'll catch you all at the next one.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerome. L'Oreal.
I don't have anything. Sorry, I'm just trying to be okay.
That is fair.
That's fair.
David R.
So 6 months ago, I argued before the Minnesota Supreme Court, and I still haven't heard my opinion. But today, they issued an opinion in another Fourth Amendment case, and there was some tea leaves in there that if I read really, really strongly, may bode well for my opinion, or maybe I'm just delusional, and I'll be waiting another 6 months. But yeah, we'll see. So that was my news.
Thanks, David. David S.
I had a great time door knocking on the 38th and First Avenue block with Kenzie and seeing all the neighbors. And then also I had a great time at the farmers market this past Sunday. And I feel like the people that you can get to fill out a survey and stop and give you the time are those people that you know. So I think it's so great that all of us do that because we all probably know different folks. So it was a good time.
Awesome. Thanks. Todd?
We had I don't want to talk business, but we had a really kind of interesting fundraising meeting last night. And so what comes to light is I don't know where we stand or where we're going with kind of branding and mission, vision, purpose, and some bullet points. And we need some support for when we're out there door knocking in a written form for who we are and why we're doing this.
Okay, great. No, I think that's a good discussion point. BJ?
Looking forward to the charter forum on Saturday. Thanks, Josh, for organizing that. And I got up to the UP of Michigan over the weekend. I got to see those fall colors that Katie was talking about.
Awesome. Thanks, BJ. Sarah T.
Open Streets Lindale was awesome. You probably can't see, but I'm wearing my Minneapolis Pirate t-shirt that I screen printed. It was super fun to see so many people. The weather was gorgeous and really held out. A friend said that their goal for Open Streets was to not talk to any candidates for office. That goal was not met. There were a ton of people there from campaigns, from different nonprofits, from neighborhoods. And yeah, just super fun to see a bunch of people out on bikes, walking, skateboarding, rollerblading, doing all the things. And yeah, just smiles on their face.
Thanks, Sarah. And I hope the person who was selling an assortment of wigs comes back next year because that was one of my favorite booths as well too. Kenzie, would you mind going?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed getting to know a lot of you guys these past few weeks and walking around the neighborhood, whether that be door knocking or going to businesses to update contact information or going to meetings like last night. There's a fundraising meeting that Todd was talking about, and yeah, just seeing all the different walks of life and perspectives in this neighborhood, and yeah, seeing the fall colors like Katie said.
Awesome, thanks. And Sarah, LR?
I heard that the silent disco crowd is coming on November 2nd to be pole dancers. So I'm super psyched. They were also at the 40th Street Bridge Art Dedication on Saturday, which was an awesome event. Chris, I have a bunch of information to share with you that we should talk about what we do next. Got a bunch of emails, people who are like, hey, I met you at the safety meeting a year and a half ago. I need to be more involved. And I was like, yes, you do. So it was great, a super great event. And we also trained in 7 neighbors who are going to be our new orchard caretaking team, and have a plan to add 16 more fruit trees to the orchard in the spring. And had a great workshop led by the University of Minnesota Urban Forestry Department. So it was super fun weekend.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you, Sarah. And with that, I will officially close the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for this discussion. Again, like I said previously, appreciate everybody here. And again, yeah, thanks again. It was great to see everyone like always. So
Happy birthday,
bye,
Brian.
and we'll see you later.
Thanks, bye. Have fun at Ola Arepa.
Bye,
I will.
everybody.
I have good
Bye,
cocktails.
everyone. Good to see you.
David, you want to work online or? Wait, I can't hear you.
Sorry, what was that?
I said, do you want to work online or do you want to just send me an amendment?
I can send you an amendment.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm getting sleepy. I'll send you an amendment tomorrow, but you're working tomorrow morning?
So I'm putting grants together tomorrow. I don't
Okay.
want to wait till Friday to send them. So I'm
Yep.
making sure all this grant stuff is together. And I have almost all day with no meetings. So
Yeah, so if I get it to you before lunch, that's fine.
perfect.
Yeah, I can do
Yep.
that. It'll take me about 10 minutes. It's pretty
Okay.
simple. So, yep.
Awesome.
Have a good night.
Okay, you too. Night.